Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement. That's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast with my incredible co-host back again in the studio today, the great Professor Penn, for another episode of HEBROES, another edition of HEBROES, episode 167.
Good evening.
Welcome back, Professor Penn.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
By popular demand from last Friday's HEBROES episode, where I went off the rails, and now we got you back. Tell me about what you're seeing this week over the last couple of days. We didn't really even discuss the Tucker and
Putin
interview, really.
Yeah.
Let's start there. Let's start with Tucker and Putin. What'd you think of the interview? What'd you think of the history? What'd you think of the explanation that he laid out, that Putin laid out?
Let me just take it on a flanking move here, which is going to freak out some of the listeners and viewers. This past weekend, I watched a movie called Europa, The Last Battle, about 9 hours. It was the history of Europe during the World War II period, told from the Nazi perspective. Now, people might say, Professor Penn, are you a Nazi? And I will say, no, I'm a student of history. And as I watched the movie, the references to the historical events of which I was quite familiar, being told from a different perspective, was quite thought-provoking. So as regards Putin and his very long half-hour rendition of European history, which I noticed that all the Atlanticist PhDs from our dirty dozen top universities said he's out of his mind. And you know what runs through my mind? When's the last time you were in the Ukraine there? I could give you a list of them. That's just Ann Applebaum. There's just a whole group of these people that are Bill Kristol. There's another one. Great one. David Frum, another one. These people have never been in the region. They have no tie to the region. Everything they've learned from the PhD that taught them, who learned from the PhD that taught them, who was probably, very likely, on the payroll of MI6 here specifically to brainwash our academic dummies who get PhDs. So I don't know why his version of history can just be so offhandedly rejected by people that have never been there. And I have to say this, you've heard me say this to you personally, and I've said it on my podcast. Guess where my family is from? That would be from the Ukraine. So I actually have first-person reportage. For example, we spoke Russian in our home when I was a little kid. My father fluently spoke Russian. My grandparents fluently spoke Russian. They were from the Ukraine. So their reports of what happened mean a whole hell of a lot more to me than some PhD from, let's say, Princeton University. Would you rather have a firsthand report than somebody that read it out of somebody's textbook?
I would. But, that's just me.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
some jerk-offs like their jerk-off secondhand.
Yeah, that's really sad, isn't it?
Secondhand jerk-offs.
That's a T-shirt.
That's a good T-shirt.
That's a great T-shirt. Visit the freepeopleradio.com store get your secondhand jerk-off T-shirt.
Yeah. That's what
That's rich.
What
I'm going to use that. Next time I see something from Bill Kristol, I'm just going to go secondhand jerk-off. Because usually I go globalist. Usually I say globalist, exclamation point. Now I'm just going to switch to secondhand jerk-off, exclamation point. It's even better.
What do you think of his claims of denazification there in Ukraine? And the whole story about, because you were talking about this a year ago about the sort of gang violence that what can be described as gang violence, but looks like it was much more coordinated by maybe the CIA against Russian-speaking people in the Donbass area and other places like that. What are you familiar with what he claimed, what Putin claimed about the sort of Nazification of Ukraine and persecution of the Russian people,
Uh,
Russian speaking people?
I I personally, from familial history, would have a predisposition to believe in the Nazi argument for the Ukraine because my family members were killed in the Ukraine, in Kiev, by Ukrainians. Now they were killed. They were Jewish. The claim could be made that they were Jewish Bolsheviks. They rounded up all the Jewish Bolsheviks and killed them, everyone they get their hands on. In fact, the greatest single atrocity of the war actually took place in the Ukraine. It was a massacre at Kiev. Some 30,000 Ukrainian citizens, actually they were Russian citizens, were killed by small arms fire, pistols, in a weekend. So I didn't set the scene, right? I mean, I'm talking about intergenerational cultural trauma, of which I am a proud recipient thereof. They killed these Ukrainians under, Nazi supervision allegedly, but I think they like their work. If you're going to kill 30,000 people in a weekend with handguns and rifles, you got to like your work.
Yeah.
You got to like your work because that's hard work, right? So they did, and that's the greatest single atrocity of the war. Now, the claim could be made that's a long time ago, but there's a lot of people that are claiming they're Jewish that haven't put on tefillin or a yarmulke for, 2 generations, and they're still claiming that they're Jews. So why would it be any different with Nazis? I mean, these are very enduring cultural mechanisms. I mean, the Nazis have a hero, Adolf Hitler. They have all kinds of rituals. They got, ways to get incorporated higher up in the Nazi hierarchy. They got a culture. So why couldn't it endure? So I am predisposed, particularly when I look at the pictures, which you can go find right on Wikipedia or right on Google, of Ukrainian paramilitary and military members wearing runs. Now people are going to say, well, they're not really Nazi symbols. They're runs. They mean something else. If you really were sensitive to not being labeled as a Nazi, why would you use a Nazi symbol? I mean, you can pick any symbol, any symbol. So they picked these for a reason. And so I am predisposed to believe that there is an element in Ukrainian society that is, well, from Putin calls them Nazis. I don't take Putin's word for everything either.
Right.
And then we got on this side, I'm reading all this stuff on X from all these great, what'd you call, from the secondhand jerk-offs.
Yeah, secondhand jerk.
The secondhand jerk-offs are making this case like Putin is a communist. And when they come back into the Ukraine, if they take it over, we have to defend the Ukraine, because if the Ukraine falls, it's going to be just like what happened when the Soviets took over the Ukraine at the start of the Soviet Union. There's going to be killings. And I just saw an article in The Guardian. There's a great source. They're discovering these mass graves that are left over from the Soviet period. And they're trying to pin a Soviet-era intentionality upon the Russians.
Yeah, Putin's claim is that the mass graves that they found are Nazi graves. So we find ourselves in a position where we're defending the Nazis in a way.
Well, it seems that even the possibility or the claim thereof, but the only thing I can...
Well, here let's go. What about this? What about them honoring the Nazi war hero there in Canada on the Parliament floor?
Or Chrystia Freeland.
I mean, that actually happened.
Yes, that's correct.
That was odd.
Well,
Zelensky was there and Trudeau was there.
Oh, let's just slide right on down the rabbit hole, right to Operation Paperclip. Let's just start there. Let's just start with what we actually know historically is true.
Proceed.
Our country, the United States of America, our country had a very well-developed eugenics movement. It gave itself over to Darwinism right when Darwin was still sucking out of the bottle. We were Darwinists here because we had a lot of with the people that wanted freedom. Along came the people that wanted to have the slavery and the drugs and the piracy business model. So we needed that. We had that justification here. We had very well developed eugenics laws. We had a proto-Nazi movement here. We had the German-American Bund. We had the silver shirts. We had conflict in the streets. We've covered this. We've talked about it. We had a Nazi movement here that was really only went away because of the Japan attack on Pearl Harbor, because they all got branded as terrorists. Say, we've heard this before. Traitors, terrorists. And that's another thing I'm seeing all over X. Everybody's a traitor now. But we had this Nazi movement here, and it disappeared, but the ideas didn't disappear. And that's really the key, is where are these ideas, and where are they coming from, and what are they doing to our children? That's the thing that I find the most concerning. One could make the claim, if one was in the frame of mind, you could say that the post-World War II Democrat liberal order just evolved the concept that one race is superior and another is inferior under the rubric of democratic liberalism. Because what are we doing as America? We're telling everybody how to live their lives.
Right.
And then we had Operation Paperclip. Let's just go back. Okay, so now here comes the Nazis. I watched this Europa. Every historical event that I had studied that was mentioned in there, I saw it through fresh eyes. And I'm not saying I'm taking the Nazi vision of history. I'm saying there's information there. Going back to Putin, Putin gave this beautiful historical summary of Russian history and the relationship between Ukraine, Poland, and Russia going back to 862. 862, Americans don't have that kind of frame of reference. Our frame of reference is like, yesterday. We don't even have a historically interested people. How can we self-govern if we don't have the interest of understanding where our ideas come from? That's really my greatest concern. The thing that I find the most troubling of all this is if we the people, are so narcissistic that we don't care about how we think the way we think, how are we ever going to get out of the spot that we find ourselves in? But we had this big out-migration of really European Jewry, which was fought by both the Democrat and Republican parties equally in the 1930s, trying to keep out of the country what was called Jewish Bolshevism, which is a real phenomenon. And all these Jewish people came here, and that's where my forebears came from. And who was my father? Professor at the University of Minnesota. And his PhD professor was a guy named Herbert Feigl, who was from the Frankfurt School, the famous Frankfurt School, and he was a Jewish man who I knew him, and he didn't believe in God. He was a proud atheist. So my question would have been, at the age of 8, had I been able to articulate it, how can you say, Professor Feigl, you're a Jew when you don't believe in God? Are those two related? And he was a great philosopher. I would have been very interested to hear his answer. He's long dead. But they came over here, these Bolsheviks, and they went right into our universities. And here's how it went down. What we really wanted was the physicists, the chemists, and the biologists. And they had their pals. So they'd say, yeah, I'll teach at Harvard. But these 4 sociologists, this economist, and this anthropologist, we're all coming together as a team, or I'm out. So all these universities ended up taking all this European input, these European ideas, and of course that got the ball rolling from a scientific research perspective.
From Paperclip, you mean?
Well, before Paperclip.
Before Paperclip.
And then we actually had Paperclip, which I think our government admits to
1,500, 1,600.
Great.
Could be 16,000.
Could be 160,000.
We don't know.
We have no idea. None. And so
it's always more than they say.
Well, when you have eugenics and Darwinism, let's leave the eugenics out. One could say in the audience, people are going to be saying, how can you leave the eugenics out? We're living in a time of peak eugenics because it's very Darwinistic right now. It's survival of the fittest at the business level, the familial level. But the adoption in our universities of a Darwinist worldview extirpated the previous hundreds and hundreds of years of a Christian frame to educate our young people. So I have 5 kids that have gone through university. None of them took any religion classes. None of them developed any higher or deeper interest in faith life through their educational experience. In fact, their educational experience stood in juxtaposition to any kind of faith life that I'd given them before they went there. So that's all the way through to kindergarten now. That's another big problem. How do we turn around? You know, you're a politician.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you don't like that. Is that the right label for you, politician? It's not, is it?
I'm a motherfucker.
As a motherfucker,
Mm-hmm.
okay, as the hatchet man,
Yeah.
as the motherfucker hatchet man of Minneapolis, the belly of the beast. What do we do with this educational system to restore some semblance of balance in our children's education?
Matter of national security.
Proceed.
It's going to have to come from the president, from the executive branch. This is a a great issue of, there's a duality where we don't want the federal government to have more power, and we want more power for the states. And then there's some things that are so far gone at the state level that they may need federal intervention, which is
like segregation.
which is horrifying.
Like segregation.
Well, yeah, slavery.
Like slavery.
Right.
Yes.
And you need great leaders to distinguish which of those key issues need that federal intervention. Like the Federal Reserve is probably another good example. Technology, big tech is another good example of an industry that probably needs federal government oversight. AI, for sure. I mean, that's probably the most dangerous one, actually. But yeah, education. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know what can be done. I mean, that's going to be a huge fight in the Supreme Court, and but that's what should be done. The education as it is today is a matter of national. It's a danger to national security. It really is.
I got an idea. Let's revoke the 501c3 status of all the churches, synagogues, and mosques in the country.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's revoke that. Let's start there.
That'd be good.
Because, maybe 2/3 of them are going to go out of business. Well, then they were just in business for the money anyhow, weren't they? Let's get it down to where we're actually transmitting a religious education that is reflective of the different faiths, and let's render unto Caesar what's due to Caesar. Well,
Yeah.
what kind of scam is that you don't have to render, but you can't really talk full-throated about how you feel about things anymore?
Yeah.
Maybe we need that. I was listening to Alex, and he was going off about the Super Bowl ad where
With the feet,
with
Jesus
the
washing
feet,
the feet.
yeah, and he just said this is a really satanic.
Put a gay black man at the end.
I didn't see it.
White guy washing his feet. I mean, of course. Now that was racially divisive, but it was also sexually divisive, and it was spiritually divisive. So, I mean, it was all systems go with the division there. Much more than the singing of "Lift Every Voice and Sing." In fact, I don't even remember them showing the singing of "Lift Every Voice and Sing" on the national broadcast. Maybe they decided not to in the end to appease the outcry against it. I didn't give a shit one way or another. I didn't give a shit what songs they played. I didn't give a shit if they, and again, I told you this. I said this on Wednesday night's podcast. I think it dishonors the troops. Well, first, it dishonors the troops and their memory and their sacrifice when we allow the military-industrial complex to operate the way it's operating. That's a disgrace to the military, to the people who served. But when we let a company like the NFL pretend like they care about the troops by playing the national anthem, that disgraces the military. That's dishonest. Right out in the open. I mean, it's just if anybody believes that the NFL actually has any reverence for what it means to be American and the sacrifice made by our troops to defend American citizenship or the ideas here in this country, way of life, culture, then I mean you're a crackhead. You're no better than a crackhead. You might as well smoke crack. Go out and start smoking crack. It'll be funner. Serious.
Because the NFL and the NBA and the Major Baseball, Major League Baseball, MLB,
NBA,
NHL,
all of them.
they really don't care about the core values of the traditional culture.
It's just a ceremonial proceeding that takes place to appeal to boomers who still have some reverence for that Americanism.
Are you saying that the younger generations don't have that?
Oh, the younger generation doesn't even stand for the anthem. They don't give a shit. They've been taught not to care. You guys grew up saying the Pledge of Allegiance in the school.
That's correct.
Right, so that's why they do it.
Oh, so we've become
you're a holdover.
A cohort.
Yeah, you're a cohort. Yeah, you're a holdover cohort.
There's more money to get out of us.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there's more money to get.
I can't tell you how many even at the high school level. Now, the high school level is different. Like what they do at high school games or at high school sporting events should be completely separate from what they do at commercial and corporate sporting events, including college. So, you know, and in college is even different because those are academic institutions. Professional sports are completely independent sports corporations, right? So what they're doing is even different than the college level. I think the anthem should be played at the college level and at the high school level. But playing at the professional level is an absolute disgrace. And partly because what the corporations have become at the professional level, globalist to the max, it's anti-American. So don't slap the national anthem on it and appease the boomers.
In other words, put lipstick on the pig.
Yeah, don't put lipstick on it there. Don't put red, white, and blue lipstick on a pig. I can't say it any better than that. So, I mean, I was just saying that because before we ever get to the Antichrist LGBTQ ads during the Super Bowl, you got to ask the question, why are people watching the Super Bowl? And I get it. You know, a lot of family gatherings now proceed around the Super Bowl because it's such a big cultural event here in America. So I get even if you were watching the Super Bowl or if the Super Bowl was on at a family gathering you happen to be at, I get that. Even if you want to watch it, even if you're interested in the game. I sort of watched it. I mean, I thought it was a good game. Some people think it's scripted. I would say there's probably some merit to that. Don't know for sure. Would like to believe that it's not because I'm a professional athlete myself. That would be horrifying to review history through the lens of rigged sporting events. But it's possible. However, you know, I thought the game was a good game. It was a suspenseful game. A lot of Super Bowls are blowouts. But the ad, well before we get to the ad, that was obviously anti-Christ and taking the Lord's name in vain and perverting the parable of Jesus washing the feet. Well, before we get to that, the biggest problem is that they actually played the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem, and they did the flyover and they presented the military in the beginning of the game. And that is the sign of military-industrial complex having this propaganda hold on the narrative. And who else is buying into it? Nobody my age buys into that. Nobody my age buys into this false sense of allegiance to the military or our troops. That's all the boomer.
I don't know that it's nobody.
No, not a significant cohort. That's why more than ever they're not signing up
They're still
to be
getting
in the military.
That's correct. But I will say I look at it. I look at it a little bit more through the.
And even more importantly, let me say this before you go. Even if young people are signing up for the military, increasingly they're not signing up for the military.
I want the money.
It's for the money. They've made the military and service a radical a product of radical materialism, which again undermines what they're trying to present it as, some cultural, reverence for sacrifice for your country. They're presenting it as a national honor, but it's not a national honor. It's radical materialism and economic interest alone.
Well, we're talking about things that I think a lot of commentators have had a purchase on for quite some time, but you couldn't talk about it without running into a tremendous pushback because we have created this wall around service and the military academies, and of course, we respect people that risk their lives and put themselves in harm's way. So it's hard to talk about it, but I think if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the military has the front end of this event, and you're saying that the anthem and the flyover really kind of co-opt or kind of set the tone for the entire Super Bowl experience for the hundreds of millions of people that watch it. And if you're watching it from offshore, if you're not an American citizen, you're watching it, wow, that must be quite a thing to view. But I want to look at it and talk about it in just a slightly different way, because this is painful for me. This is the one event that all Americans gather together for, the one event.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to juxtapose it. And I don't think we talked about it on HEBROES. I think I talked about it on the Professor Penn podcast. So I don't think I'm repeating myself. The very same weekend, this was the Chinese New Year. It's the Year of the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese have a gathering event, a media event. It's called their annual gala show. And because I've been to China so much, I've watched it off and on since the beginning of maybe like 2006. And they have 4 hours. It's about the same length as the Super Bowl. There was not one military display. There was not one commercial. It was the entire country of China, and virtually every Chinese citizen watches this show. So we've got these two high rituals, these two country-specific high rituals. One is the Chinese, which is really a show of singing and dance.
Chinese culture.
Chinese culture, and trying to bring they have their Mongolian and their Tibetan and their Muslim, they let all their different groups present and perform. They're trying to create cultural connectivity and harmony, and they're giving great play to artistic expression.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got ours, which is a giant
guns and butter,
and a big money-making opportunity. So we have basically a spiritual intensification of what it is to be Chinese. And we have an American, let's drain the last drops out of your balls event, and that really is interesting, because we're always criticizing the Chinese as being materialists. Well, who's really the materialist? I mean, if you look at the rituals, the high country-specific all-citizen rituals, they've got a beautiful artistic, spiritual presentation of being Chinese.
Yeah, well, theirs is just a fucking scam, though. I mean, I'm not buying it one.
Well, go watch it. It's not a scam.
I'm not buying it one.
Watch it.
China's whole fucking presentation is one big scam. They're liars. They don't believe in God, so they have no choice but to lie. People who don't believe in God are going to be dishonest by nature.
Well, we're lying too, because that display.
But they're in a different way.
I'm just saying that from the perspective of culture,
yeah,
their mechanism.
They believe in a Chinese identity.
That's correct.
They're showing it.
That's their religion.
There is no American identity.
And what is being
actually, let's say it even different. The American identity has become exactly what the Super Bowl presents. Distraction with superficial things, being sold. I mean, the biggest thing about the Super Bowl is what?
What is the biggest thing about the Super Bowl?
Ads.
I was going to say,
nothing tells you.
Do you want pepperoni or hamburger on your pizza?
Nothing tells you you're a jerk-off, sort of propagandized, psyoped media industrial complex culture than your biggest cultural event of the year, prioritizing or being, coveted for the ads. I mean, how good
people watch for the ads.
People watch for the ads.
Yeah,
it's a huge talking point. It's the biggest talking point of the Super Bowl,
right?
And the ads are so expensive. It's almost absurd. RFK had an ad in the Super Bowl.
He apologized for that ad.
I didn't
see. Yeah, he apologized to his family.
I don't get it. Why?
Well, because they criticized him for using
JFK's image.
Yeah, and he actually apologized. He bent a knee to his family, which I think is a mistake, because they want. I mean, I'm looking on X.
He's made a lot of mistakes.
Well, they're saying that he doesn't have the right. He can't fill the shoes. Oh, well, I think he's quite impressive myself.
Can't fill and they can. I mean, who are they to say? Who's saying?
His brothers, his sisters, his cousins.
What have they done?
They've saluted the flag of the Democrat Party.
There you go.
That's what.
No, I mean, what have they done individually?
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not speaking of anybody in specific, but
Well, but I'm saying is if they had done anything of note like he's done,
then we know who they were.
we
What
would
do
know who they were.
We don't
Yeah,
know.
step up to the fucking mic.
Right.
Yeah. Or are you still scared because they blew your uncle's head off and everybody was okay with it?
Yeah, just the bravery of him doing this is
Absolutely
very impressive.
You know, and
You
there's
know
no
him.
disrespect.
You
to
know him, don't you?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I mean, you know, and I like him. And there are a lot of people out there who I have a difference of opinion on many key issues, and RFK would be one of them. And he knows where I would, where I would differ, because unlike some of the other fucking Kennedys who are hiding back there in the shadows, no disrespect, Bobby, but some of your family members are sellouts. That's the reality. I got some of my own family. Couldn't trust them to hold the line on important shit, especially in matters of this magnitude. Difference being, people in my family probably wouldn't understand the fundamentals of the issues they would need to stand for. His family, on the other hand, understand the issues thoroughly, and they would fucking sell us all down the river in a heartbeat. And so it, it, I disagree with them. Number one, he's taking a stand against the status quo in the Democrat Party. That's a good thing. He's had to take a stand against his family,
Takes some bravery.
which takes some bravery. And he's had to take a stand against the military-industrial complex, because anytime a Kennedy steps up to do anything, the military-industrial, the shadow of what took place with Kennedy hangs over that person's head. So,
He
fair
was.
play
I
to
think.
him.
I
Fair
think he
play.
was. I think he was in the hotel in Los Angeles the night his father was killed. I think he was actually there.
Wow.
If memory serves, I'm sorry if I'm incorrect, but as my memory serves me, he was in. I think it was the Ambassador Hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he was actually there. I think he was 9 years old, which actually was my age at the time. So I mean, I remember, and the fact that he would have the courage, having seen that, to risk everything to present ideas. And I don't agree with a lot of his ideas. That's another thing. This whole hatred that's being stoked because
Yeah.
people don't agree with each other.
Yeah.
Apparently, we're all supposed to agree with each other.
Well, no, the problem is we don't have the key issues down. We want to.
Well, let's get the one key issue down. I want to just say it. There's one key one now.
Go ahead.
One, because we don't have all of the people coalesced around this very, very simple new dialectic. Because we got all these ones that don't fit anymore, like red and blue, conservative and liberal, Democrat and Republican. That's all yesterday.
Yeah.
Today, there's just one key idea. Are you a globalist or you are a nationalist? If the nationalists concede, if they succeed, if the nationalist movement succeeds in undermining and defeating the globalist movement, then we're going to have an argument amongst the nationalists. Are we going to have a national atheist country or a national faithful country? How is that going to sort itself out? But right now, that's down the road. Right now, we just need to identify these globalists and make fun of them because they are secondhand jerk-offs.
Yeah.
They're just secondhand jerk-offs with PhDs and MDs.
Victoria Nuland. I mean, the simple fact that, and it's Amy Klobuchar too.
Oh,
I mean,
she's bad.
The fact that Amy Klobuchar, the single greatest indictment of our American political culture is that Republicans in Minnesota actually like Amy Klobuchar. I ran into a guy at a 7th grade boys basketball tournament. He was reffing. He was a referee, and he recognized me. He came over and he said, "I love how straight you talk on Twitter. It's really fun to see. It's inspiring, but it's fun to see."
Secondhand jerk-offs.
Secondhand jerk-offs. He likes that brash delivery. But we started to talk, and he asked me if I was running this cycle and who against. And I told him Amy Klobuchar, and I told him that she gets better results than any of the other more recent Democrat statewide elections. She outperformed Governor Walz, which can only mean one thing.
Republicans are voting for her.
Republicans are voting for her. It's the single greatest indictment of American political culture, is that Minnesota Republicans don't see Amy Klobuchar for what she really is. She's the exact same as Nikki Haley. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota Republicans support Nikki Haley.
Oh, I think they do. I think that would be the preferred of the.
Did you see how disgusting that Fox interview was with her, where she said that Donald Trump went after her husband and that no military member, if you go after one military family, you go after all military families? What kind of weird collectivist communist sort of fucking epithet is that? So we can't criticize anybody black, or you should criticize everybody black. If you criticize anybody Jewish, you're criticizing everybody Jewish. If you criticize anybody Russian, you're criticizing everybody Russian. If you criticize anybody who's ever served in the military, you're criticizing everybody who served in the military. Is that where we're at now in the Republican Party?
And there's a big division within the military members. We've got a group of people that are strongly coming out as Democrat, impugning the Republicans as being traitors. They just say traitors, traitors.
Yeah.
And then there's another group of military members that are coming out and saying, hey, there's no gender pronouns in the military. There's, you're going to get killed there. And if you don't, you're going to come back. I mean, these people are very frank about their disdain for the military industrial complex. So we've got two groups of people.
I mean, am I supposed to, let's just talk about it honestly. Am I supposed to salute John Milley? Am I supposed to?
General Milley?
General Milley, yeah. That's what his first name is John, right?
Mark
Milley. I'm sorry. You're right. General Milley is what I meant. Am I supposed to, respect General Milley? He's a fucking traitor. He's a traitor. So, I mean, just because you guys didn't formally, court-martial him and have him, brought up on charges of treason or espionage.
In your opinion, he's a traitor.
Yeah, in my opinion, he's a
traitor. There's a lot of this traitor thing going around.
Well, look, if you talk to our mortal national enemy behind the commander-in-chief's back without his knowledge and you undermine our position, I don't think there's any better definition of treason than that. On a military basis.
Didn't Donald Trump
say? You could even swap secrets. You could even trade military intelligence, little files, or how the lug nuts work in the future prototype of the stealth bomber, for example, something like that. But when you're top brass in the Joint Chiefs and you have a conversation with the leadership of our mortal national enemy behind the back of the commander-in-chief, expressively to undermine his leadership, I mean, what do you call that?
And you know what was interesting about it was...
Drop in the comments. What do you call that?
He was not actually talking to the leadership of the Chinese government. He was talking to the leadership of the Chinese military. So one might ask themselves, who's running the show, just generally speaking, here, there, and everywhere? But I'm a little bit of I mean, I'm not going to pick at you because you're going to fight with me, but there's a lot of this traitor accusation going around, and someone's going to accuse Professor Penn of being a traitor because I'm willing to look at alternative versions of history. This goes back to Putin. Is he
traitor to who? You could look at, first off.
Well, no, these people call you a traitor.
Yeah, well, fuck them. I mean, that's good. We can have that. We can have that debate. I think all these people who try and present themselves as protectors of the Democrat liberal order and use World War II as a launch pad or a platform to spread globalism and sell out the American people, I think they're traitors. I think all these Atlanticists like David Frum are traitors. But, I mean, who is David Frum anyway? He's fucking Canadian. So maybe soon Canada will be a part of America if we do what we should do. And then I guess we could rightfully call the little fucker a traitor because, I mean, it'll be America and you'd be selling out America. But, I mean, who is he anyway? I mean, any of these people. Victoria Nuland, who is she? I mean, these people do not believe in American citizenship. They believe in global citizenship. So a lot of the things that they would do would sell out America. I mean, it depends on what side of the street you're on.
It's an interesting frame of reference. You're saying, by definition,
if you're a globalist, you're a traitor
to the idea of America the nation.
That's
interesting.
You're a traitor fundamentally to what this country was founded on.
Oh, now you're getting down to the root causes now.
If I'm an American,
what was this
I'm Thomas Jefferson. I say that we don't want puppet monarchs, the Monroe Doctrine, any of these things. I mean, many of America's, inception ideas were a rejection of globalism and economic imperialism, especially from the British Empire. These people are serving they're expressly traitors to our founding
Okay,
documents.
let's just say this again, because I think we're getting down to some really critical issues. Did I just hear you say, just want to make sure I got it right, that the founding of the country was expressly a rejection of empire, a rejection of our place, America's place in the empire, a rejection of British imperial globalism. We rejected that.
Right.
Did I understand what you're saying?
Well, absolutely.
Well, how the hell did we get into the mess we're in now?
Traitors. Traitors.
Traitors.
Yeah, they're traitors.
So they have betrayed the spirit and essence of what it was to be America.
Absolutely.
And what was their lever point for doing so? I think that'd be slavery.
Or World War II.
Well, it started a long time ago.
Yeah.
After the Civil War, where did the administrative state really find its birthplace? After the Civil War, to create a bureaucracy to overwhelm the power of the states to do their own thing.
The minority rights.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So we have this administrative
It's
state.
a sophisticated thing, and people don't understand how sophisticated these people are. I mean, they'll leave you a breadcrumb trail over here that's full of emotion and cultural, passion, and like the Black National Anthem. Nobody even thinks, why are we accepting that this league plays the national anthem in the first place? Why do we let them put the red, white, and blue on their logo? And then when June comes and it's LGBTQ month, they paint the thing rainbow. Why do we let them take the rainbow?
Yeah,
these are sophisticated
Why
cultural.
do they get to use our most sacred cultural mechanisms to promote their money-making schemes? That would be called wrapping yourself in the cloth of faith.
Right.
Faith in our country in this case,
Right.
or faith in Christ. That's why I would like to see the 501c3 exemption wiped out for the churches.
But was it really the Marxists? I said this on my show the other day. If you think the reason why we lost this country is because of black people, or if you think the reason we lost the country is because of Marxists or communists, you're lying to yourself. You're a whiner. You're a complainer. In the sports world, we don't have time for those kind of people, which is why it's fitting for me to be a rising voice in the
hatchet
movement.
man.
That's right. That's why it's fitting we don't have time for whiners. They did this, they did that. What the fuck did you do? Or more importantly, what didn't you do?
I didn't tell you this story. You're going to laugh about this.
All these Marxists, every time the Marxists and communists touched something, the people who were in the know,
somebody bent over.
They bent over, they ran and hid. Like the LGBTQ taking the rainbow for their own movement. Why did the Christians allow the LGBTQ movement to take a biblical icon like the rainbow? Because you people didn't believe in the stories yourselves. Because if you believed them enough,
you'd have never let it happen.
You'd have never let it happen.
Because that's a symbol.
You're busy watching football.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I went to a party this past weekend. You're going to like this one. And I didn't go as Professor Penn. I went as a civilian because it was a party after all.
Yeah.
And you know me, I don't go to a lot of parties, but I found myself at a party. And there was 6 American citizens, all my age, all of them. They're all my age. We're sitting at a big card table and drinking beer, and they're telling stories, and I'm listening. I don't say anything political because, it's not that right venue. And all of a sudden, one of them started to complain. And another one complained. They started complaining about this and started complaining about that. I'm just listening. And then they started in on the gay people. I said, okay, you motherfuckers, shut up. I have a question for you. Who here will be attending Minnesota State caucuses on February 27th? And they looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. I said, you know what a caucus is? No. I said, don't complain in my presence. I'm going to be ugly about it because you guys are
secondhand jerk-offs.
Well, I didn't use that word because you hadn't introduced that in the T-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a word, pusillanimously, which is an ancient word which says lack of courage. And my theory is that's how we got the word pussy. Not from women, but from pusillanimously. And I looked at him and I said, you guys, I don't mean this in a sexual way. You guys are pussies. You have no courage. You want to complain. I got really mad. In fact, the women ran over to make peace because I got pissed off because these are people my age,
Mm-hmm.
business owners, workers. One guy owned 2 farms. Another guy worked as a plant manager. These were not accomplished people, but they were just good American citizens working, and they were complaining. And I said to him, I said, I know you're not even going to remember on February 27th that you need to go. You're not even going to remember.
Yeah.
I got pissed. So I want, as long as we have this moment, because a lot of times we forget to say this, on the 27th of February, if you're in Minnesota, it's our chance to self-govern. See, now you don't even think about self-governance because you're self-governing and you're a candidate. So, there's so many ways that someone could self-govern. One could self-govern just by maintaining their health. That's a way of own your own business. But my gosh, people have to get out and take responsibility for themselves because there's nobody coming. There's no cavalry coming.
Right.
We are the cavalry. We.
Right.
So, I mean, we should try this. We should have another protest at the Fed. Just put it out and see who shows up. And when it's you and me and 2 signs and the cops, we'll know who's with us. But you got to start somewhere. Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fine. Look, everybody gets to choose how the country burns now. That's a great way to look at it. And you can complain about whatever you want. I mean, I can just see, and it's funny to watch. It's frustrating, but it's somewhat comical too, because I can just see, when the Black National Anthem trends on Twitter or on X or wherever it is, and people just storm the topic, and they can't even help themselves. They're being baited into a nothing issue. Nobody gives a fuck what happens on Super Bowl Sunday. You shouldn't. I mean, it's significant culturally because we've made it significant. But it's only really significant because of the lack of significance in everything else we do during the year. I mean, even if you watch the Super Bowl, even if you put your blinders on to all the bullshit propaganda that's baked into it, just the happening itself. If you were involved in politics, if you were active, if you were in caucus, it would kind of offset one another.
Does for me.
It would make the Super Bowl not significant. But the Super Bowl becomes hyper significant when you don't do any of those other things. And then to top it all off, you whine and complain about the most benign, piece of the whole deal. Does Matt Gaetz get to say, respectfully, Matt Gaetz gets to say, hey, this is what I think about this. Why? Shit, at least he's in the well of the Congress stirring shit up. So I can even now I disagree with his take on it, but
you respect it.
But I respect that he gets to have a fucking opinion because he's in the.
He earned the right.
He's crossing swords.
Some
of you guys are just getting secondhand jerk-offs, watching Matt Gaetz do it, repeating it to your little cohort of friends, and you're not even involved in the process. You don't even get a say. You actually don't get a say. You have conceded your say in the matter, and you want to talk about what Marxists and communists have done. They've actually got you to believe that being able to say it on X is having a real say. That's the great scam here. That's the psyop.
Or possibly voting.
Yeah, freedom of speech is great, no doubt, and we should preserve that. But let's not mistake that for having a say in the process. Those are 2 totally different things.
And how do we get a say in the process?
If you're Jack Posobiec and you're speaking to 1 million people, then you having a say is different than if you have 300 followers and you're just talking just to be fucking talking. Nobody's even seeing what you're saying. I mean, don't mistake that for having a real fucking say in the process. That would be foolhardy. In fact, that's exactly what they want you to think. In fact, you could argue that they created the algorithms and things just to help
pacify you.
Help pacify conservatives into thinking other people out there think the same way they do. Even if they do, so what? Are you organizing? See, the communists know the power of organizing.
Community organizing.
That's right.
I remember when Obama first showed up on the scene in 2007. I like being honest. There's a thing about, admitting your sins shows faith. Mm-hmm. Here's a sin. When they say community organizer, the first thing that ran through my mind was, what is that? Because I had no idea, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're doing. We're organizing a community now. And I'm going to criticize you, but at the same time respect you. You're so, I don't like to even use the word you, but the message is so important. The critique is so important that we forget, both of us forget, to promote the podcast and more importantly, to promote what we can do as a community to come together to support each other.
No, I don't forget.
You don't?
No.
Well, then go off. What do we want the viewers and the listeners to do? What do we want people to do?
No, I don't forget at all.
What do we want people to do?
I do it exactly the way that I believe is necessary right now. These people don't give a fuck. I'm not going to sit here and beg you. You don't give a fuck. You're not going to do it. I'm just telling the truth. This is for my own salvation. I'm just telling the truth. I hit the alarm when it needed to be hit. I rang the bell. I hit the alarm. I told you the French were coming. They're coming. You die how you want to die.
See, bro.
Fuck you.
See how nice that is? You get a nice Jewish man hanging around with you, someone not afraid to sell. See how this shit works in tandem? You get to just sit there on the top of the hill and say, fuck you people. You're not doing anything. But if you'd like to listen to my cohort, Mr. Penn, he'll give you a pitch. And here's the pitch. Self-govern.
Yeah.
Self-govern for your well-being, for the well-being of your parents, for the well-being of your children. You know, self-governance, really, political self-governance is really, if you want to break it down by the hour, it's about 1 day a year. For 24 hours a year, the country could be changed if we could get a sufficient number of American citizens to quit listening to secondhand jerk-offs and become a first-hand jerk-off themselves. Wouldn't that be great? When we shoot
if you're going to jerk off, you should do it with your first hand.
That's correct. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to get it right.
Right.
But at least you're giving it a whack. You're shooting your best shot. Shoot your best shot.
Yes.
Shoot your best shot. Yeah. And then when we get in the ring together, and this is another thing that pissed me off. You know, I'm on X, and I'm new to it, not like you're inexperienced. I was thinking to myself, shut the fuck up, cuck. I'm thinking, boy, that's very blunt, Hatchet Man. And now I'm out there with these people, and I know why you do it. Because you defeat them in the ring of ideas, and here's what they do. They run away. They don't come back and say, oh, Professor Penn, you've just defeated me. Let me tell my 1 million followers that I've just learned something from you. No, they just disappear. So you just cut right to the chase. You just say, okay, you suck. And I'm running into this all the time now. If you follow me at Prof Penn Podcast, which I'm asking you to do, this is part of the HEBROES dynamic. All of us can follow Royce on X and repost and re-amplify, and follow the Prof Penn Podcast on X and repost and re-amplify and comment. We can actually organize there today because it's relatively free there today. We might have a different idea or a different strategy next year. For example, if you don't know this, Royce now has the Royce White Show 5 nights a week on radio, on the John Fredericks Radio Network. It's on 8 to 9 p.m. Central Time. Now, why do I bring this up? You think I'm bringing this up to promote Royce. You are incorrect. I'm bringing it up to tell you radio is cool, and I'll tell you why it's cool. Because you can say anything on radio you want to, as long as you don't swear. On X, you can swear your head off. Or on YouTube, you can swear your head off. But try to say something about, well, I can't even say it because we'll get a strike.
Right.
So we've all been herded into platforms, digital platforms, where we have to be careful. And if we're not careful, we lose our platform, which is not about making money. It's about getting the word out. We don't even think about making money. This is not the point of it. But then when we get over into the radio sphere, let's make radio cool again. There was the French underground with the radio. I remember when I was a kid, when I got my first AM radio, I can remember I used to put it on my ear. KDWB. I had channel 63. I mean, I haven't thought about that since I've been like 9 years old, listening to rock and roll back in the 60s. It was cool. But now we've lost that. We got to bring that back. And I'm going to keep pushing you because you're on radio, and there your message is not attenuated. 8 to 9 Central Time, 5 nights a week. That's really great. Radio, everybody, and here's another part about radio. It's analog. It's not digital. You know, is there a movement in your generation? People are getting back into
Analog
records. Records, isn't there records?
vinyl.
Is that coming back?
I mean, they buy them for hip sake, to look cool and just kind of as memorabilia.
Is it getting cool though?
It's been cool. People collect vinyls all the time. I got a vinyl player, vinyl records.
You know that I have.
They sell them. They sell them.
Can I tell you what I got hidden away in my
Should
vault?
I put the Royce White radio show on vinyl?
Oh, that'd be badass.
That would be badass.
You want to know something? I have every Beatles album that they ever made from A to Z. I got their whole catalog on vinyl.
Really?
It's probably worth a lot of money. So one time I was moving, and one of my daughters was helping me move, and I got over to my new place. Where's the records, honey? Oh, I took them home with me. I didn't think you wanted them anymore. I said, daughter, bring them back immediately. Because she knew they were valuable. That's when I knew, I was onto something here, because they did. But I got them all. And I look through them. I don't play them, but I look at them and I think, wow, this is cool. This is history. So I would like everyone to think about analog. You know, this goes back to what you're saying. We're choosing it. Nobody's making us do it.
Right.
Giving up our freedom.
Right. Not only, and that's not the worst part. The worst part is that we whine and complain and pretend like we're not choosing it. Nothing worse than a motherfucker with excuses. As a sportsman, And don't get me wrong, there are genuine things to be said for what the establishment has done. There's a long list of it. There's an infinite list. There's an inexhaustible list of things we could talk about, and it's right to talk about them in conjunction with you doing something.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep. Go ahead.
This quite well-developed knowledge of history and philosophy that you have, did you learn this at the university, or did you teach it to yourself?
The University of what?
University of Hard Knocks. University of Iowa?
University of fucking Communism, Minnesota?
I'm just curious. Did you learn it yourself, or did you learn it at school?
No, I learned it myself.
Okay.
No, I learned some things in school. I mean, they give you general frameworks of, when you go to World History 101 and you're in the 7th grade, I mean, they give you the time periods of history, Roman Empire, Roman time. I mean, you develop certain general knowledge of history, but not any nuanced and complex, not with any real insight, intellectual insight, spiritual insight for sure. No, that didn't come from school.
I think that our Free People Radio audience is interested in history. And I want to ask all of the listeners and viewers to go buy a history book. We do the best we can in an hour and a half podcast or a 2-hour HEBROES. Like we could go back to the Ukraine. We could fill the rest
It's not even like the history is hidden. That's the scary part. As much as the establishment has done to censor the dialogue, to censor the discourse, and to curate the information, shape the narrative, they're not really rewriting the history.
Well, they are. By perspective. Let me just give you perfect.
By talking head. But not by the history that's there for you to go find.
Well, you got to look at all the street corners.
Not really, though. I mean, even this Ukraine history about the Nazism. I mean, you can go right there.
It's there.
It's right there. It's not hidden.
It's just on Google, actually.
Even with the intelligence community, even with Operation Paperclip or any other bunch of analogs of secret operations, Snowden, Assange. None of this stuff is really hidden.
Well, here's one that I ran across this past weekend that I loved. I loved this because I'm a World War II history buff. Like, I'll go in the ring with almost anyone from 33 through 45. Bring it on. PhDs, come on. Give me your best shit. Because I just am a victim, born in the 50s, of 2/3 of my family going down there, so you get kind of caught up in the, how did that shit happen? And there's a great story, the story of the evacuation of the British Expeditionary Force from Dunkirk during the fall of France when the Germans attacked France. And there's this moment where Hitler stopped the attack. They had 375,000 British soldiers trapped in a port, and they had the Luftwaffe and they had the Panzers, and all they had to do was pull the trigger, and those people would have died. They were trapped.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was there was a break in the action, and a merchant fleet, basically private citizens, went across the English Channel in private small boats. Well, of course, they had big boats too, but it was just a flotilla of boats and rescued these 375,000 British soldiers, and they lived to fight another day. And it was, like a big deal, big deal. And people would say in the history, Hitler just stopped, like he was somehow an incompetent leader. No one ever explained why he stopped the attack. Then I watched this Europa, and they show the other street corner. He let them leave. He let them up. Have you ever been in a fight with someone you let them up? I've done it. Just let them up. I don't hate you that bad that I got to finish this job. If you're willing to withdraw, good enough for me. No reason to make hatred. He actually intentionally, which is not told and not taught from the street corner perspective of the winners, which then brings into a whole question of who was really the aggressor in the war. And that was part of the Europa presentation, that actually it was Roosevelt and Churchill that were trying to force a war against the Germans. And that is, okay, I'm willing to go sort through that, and I'm going to go research this. Now, I'm not trying to deny the Holocaust or all of a sudden become Professor Penn the Nazi. I'm just saying that there's more to this history and more to the necessary research that I have to do as a student of life. I'm not a student of being a secondhand jerk-off, because I know what the secondhand jerk-offs taught me. I know what they taught me.
So what's the claim? How were Churchill and Roosevelt trying to force Germany into a war?
Well, the claim in that particular movie is that they were surrounded by agents of the international banking system and Jewish Bolsheviks that pushed them to attack Germany. And Germany was, in that particular depiction, was erected as a bastion against Bolshevism and communism, and that the war was foisted upon the Germans, and they didn't want the war. And that's a pretty novel position, because we are taught that the Germans were uber aggressive, they wanted living space, that they were expanding their empire, that they were taking back German areas, that they were completely the aggressors and caused the war. And it probably was more complex than that. I mean, that would be like saying Saddam Hussein caused that war or Muammar Gaddafi caused that war. We know, we've lived through that. I know as being alive, when Bush took over after the towers came down, the aggressiveness with which the American liberal and conservative establishments came together in a connected effort to go to war with Iraq. And we had an excuse.
The whole region.
And we had the excuse of the WMD thing, which, kind of was a fugazi, right?
One kind of. It was a fugazi. Never found weapons of mass destruction. That was a lie.
Well, people say that the poison gases, but that's not what they were talking about.
Lie. Full of shit.
But
if you see somebody say that, you're looking at a fucking neocon. Get the fuck out of here.
But the point is that cause of that conflict was much deeper than the surface level that we were fed from the secondhand jerk-offs. They don't talk about the colonialism that was the bedrock of what caused all this perturbation of these huge populations of millions and millions of people. That, Iraq was a British colony. A British colony. Yemen. Oh, Yemen is the Hootie and the Blowfish, right? Yemen is a constructed it's a constructed country. It was not. There is no such thing as Yemen. It was made up. It's a made up country. Why was it the way it is? Is because the British occupied the port of Aden to control the mouth to the Red Sea. And the same thing happened on the other side of the water with Ethiopia and Eritrea and Somalia. These places are horrifyingly screwed up because they were intentionally screwed up. So then we're American citizens and we don't look at, and this is my point. Thank you for letting me go on. You're giving me the floor today, aren't you, young man? Thank you so much. You're giving me the rope and you're letting, I can't wait till I see my Getter account. They're going to start calling me the Nazi.
Nazi Jew.
The Nazi Jew. I'm a traitor.
Yeah.
I'm a traitor.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a traitor. I'm a seeker of truth because the truth will set me free. That who in the audience, if you're listening, believes that the truth will set you free? I mean, take a self-inventory. I'm asking you, do you believe, wherever you are, if you're in the car, if you're home, if you're at work and you're listening, do we believe as a movement that the truth is going to set us free? And if we believe it's going to set us free, what does that mean? What does it mean? So I believe the truth will set me free of an illusion that's created for me by secondhand jerk-offs that learn from secondhand jerk-offs, but because they have a PhD after their name, I'm supposed to respect them because they graduated from the Dirty Dozen and believe things that I don't have any connection to. These people are. Well, we had this conversation just briefly at the end of the last podcast.
The thing that can be said about World War II and Nazi Germany is that the Americans tried to invest in the build back better of Germany after World War I, right? They invested in it.
After World War I?
Right.
They tried to build it back better?
They invested in the rebuild of Germany.
Oh, you're talking about Wall Street.
Right.
Okay.
So
we put the money in.
We put the money in.
And we had them on the pay. They were on the payroll.
Then we called in the loans when our economy got shaky in the start of the Great Depression. So, I mean,
left them hang them.
Ipso facto, you can say that there's sort of economic predation that the Germans probably felt like, hey, you guys gave us these loans, these as a part of this post-World War I reparations deal, and now all of a sudden you're going to pull the rug from under us, and what was already, a kind of phony financial system to begin with. I mean, banking in general is kind of a...
Thanks to who? That would be to Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat.
Right.
Right, and 1913.
So the economic claims or the political claims, the geopolitical claims of there being blame to go around the other nations for what Germany felt, it's the same you could be said today for Putin. I mean, it's very similar. Or Saddam or Gaddafi.
I think this is really important.
But what can't be excused is how they went about it. And how they went about it was...
violently.
Well, not only that, but racially. And I said it before, I'll say it again. The racial claims of the Nazi movement have always been almost comical. And they're comical because they get their ideologies from the same academic institutions that helped inform the people who pulled the rug from under their feet, which is why Hitler was always, in my opinion, looking for the approval of the British and the crown. He was always looking for
hoping for it.
Yeah, wanted it, believed in it, believed in Britain, and so, you were kind of a cuck. I don't give a fuck about no story of Europa. I can see the root issue is you were a cuck, even if you had some things right. And being a cuck, there are guys out there, for example, not to be too crude, but there are guys out there who take care of their kids, who are married, who pay all the bills in their house, who are good sons and nephews, who coach Little League.
I'm waiting for the punchline on this one.
They coach Little League. They're a part of the little platoons that make this country go, and fair play to them. It's good that we need that. They're still cucking. No, so you can have a lot of things right and still be a cook. It's not easy to have, sacred honor. It's not easy to be a full man. It's very hard.
It's really hard now.
It's increasingly hard. So that's what I'm saying about Germany is where they obviously went wrong was they got caught up in exactly what we're caught up in now. A lot of what we're caught up in now. And we show it on Super Bowl Sunday, Black National Anthem. We go berserk. It's like, oh my, we only have one national anthem. Do we? Your country's run by globalists. They have no reverence to the nation whatsoever. So what makes you think that the playing of the Black National Anthem is any more subversive than giving $100 billion to Ukraine? And that's the actual, if you really look at what happened over the last 72 hours, over the last 7 days, the jerk off, the distraction happened on Sunday. Everybody got caught up in whatever cultural
5
wedge
a.m.
issue,
in the morning.
whatever cultural wedge issue. Or whatever piece of the bread and circus. It could be controversy. It could be gambling. It could be alcohol. It could be sex. It could be ads. It could be racism, whatever it was. On Sunday, that was what everybody's focused on. On Monday, the real business happened.
5 a.m.
5 a.m. in the morning.
Past.
Darkest hour in the night, and pass a bill to send 100, steal from you. And the whole scam is if they can get you caught up in an idea, they can steal from you. And what they stole from Germany, really, the most important thing we all stole from Germany, the world did, the globalists post-World War II democratic liberal order, they stole their identity and used it as a scapegoat to justify globalism. There's culpability in the Germans for letting them do that. There's culpability in the Americans for letting them do it a second time. We're letting them do it a second time right now. That shouldn't be controversial. The Germans have a right to say we don't want imperial economic forces to shape and command, govern Germany.
Well,
same way we do. But the point is, the Germans decided that they were going to go about it in a racial way.
But let's just stop just for a second before we get in. I don't want to go any farther down that road because we agree about this road.
Mm-hmm.
I want something just popped into my mind here because it's related to Putin's claims. Putin is talking about there's these pockets of Russians here, and there's these pockets of Russians there, and this used to be Russian over here.
Yeah.
And he really and who separated all these Russian groups? What broke the contiguous living of people who are Russian? They didn't do it by themselves. What broke all the Germans apart? Why did Hitler feel he had to go back and get the Sudetenland or the Ruhr or the Germans that were living in Austria? Why were all these German groups put into nation states that were not run by Germans? And that's because the colonial powers sought to divide the German people from amongst themselves, the Russian people from amongst themselves. And where else did this go on? Right in the Middle East, this conflict we're into right now. We've got the Shias and Sunnis. We've got there's so many different groups that are fighting each other that when you listen to it as an American, it doesn't even make any sense. Right, because
now the Jordanians are.
They're going to attack the Iranians. I thought we were brothers. Now they're killing each other.
3 weeks ago, they were all going to come together against the West.
It's just, and when you look at what's underneath all of this, it's colonialism. It's the colonial enterprise. Divide and conquer. What is the Suez Canal? But it's the fast escape route for the getaway car. The getaway car of the British Navy, bringing all the loot and booty back from China and India, saving at that time a month of sailing around Africa so they could return quickly and rob it some more. It's.
Let me give you a perfect example of what I'm saying. The duality of how this shit really goes down makes it hyper difficult. Okay. Vladimir Putin's a great example. I think intellectually he's proven time and time again he's leaps and bounds ahead of most world leaders. That's just my take of it. On face value, when I hear him talk and the way he goes about expressing his point, whether it's to the Russian people or now in an interview with Tucker Carlson, he's running laps around most world leaders. He's much more authentic, probably because he has much more autonomy as a leader in Russia than many of the other puppet politicians that we get a chance to hear talk. like Joe Biden, for example, but others as well. But here's the reality: when I listened to the Tucker interview a second time, I realized something. Vladimir Putin's a fucking globalist.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, he's a globalist to the max.
He even said, there's not going to be any fighting. That would be against our interests. That would be illogical.
Right.
When he said that, I said, you know what ran through my mind? That damn Royce White is right again. Because we had that argument about how serious things are. And you said, it's just a scam. We're not on the verge of any nuclear war. Just relax. They're just, because, I have that anxiety because they hauled all my folks away, killed them, shot them in the back of the head. So I have anxiety. And you said, and I thought, darn it, you're right again. Because I heard the same thing you heard. He started saying, that would just be illogical, using nuclear weapons. Nobody's going to do that. He actually put up a guardrail. And he was really actually overplayed his hand a little bit, actually. Really kind of gave the game away.
He did.
Probably did it on purpose. I don't think he
probably did.
Yeah.
No, what I took away from the interview, and what I think most people should take away from the interview, is that for some strange reason, the Americans, our security state and intelligence community is unwilling to let Russia become a part of the globalist agenda that they want to become. I mean, what?
And he made that case. He said, we have the biggest economy in Europe.
Not only that,
he made a whole case about how good they are at the game.
We asked to be, we proposed to be a part of NATO. We tried to create a joint
with Clinton,
a joint defense missile system. Talk about totalitarian government.
Wait a second.
Talk about totalitarian globalism.
Wait a second. Aren't Russian cosmonauts and American astronauts
still working together in the space
station? Still working together at the highest level, the single highest expression of technology.
Literally.
Space.
Yes.
So all this shit's going on.
Russians and Americans still working, collaborating.
What is that?
A scam.
We're being scammed. And you know what the scam is? $90 billion. Frog up. Frog up. How much did you tell me that was for every citizen? You had
$1,300 per household.
$1,300. Frog up. Frog up. $1,300. Hey.
No, and look, I'm not saying there's not a genuine conflict taking place, for the split. What I'm saying is there's a war, and then there's a war behind the war. And the war behind the war in this case seems like, for some reason, Vladimir Putin, has brought Russia to a place of relative modernity and even democracy, you could say, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and the West is still skeptical of them. They're still side eyeing them. They're like,
the jerk off crowd, the secondhand jerk off crowd, they are making a big effort to say that the Russians are just communists, that Putin's a false flag, he's still a communist.
Okay, but here's the tell. Let's say they're lying. What would bring them into the NATO alliance? What clauses or provisions are there in being a part of the NATO alliance that would allow Vladimir Putin to pose as a friendly within the alliance and be able to do something that he can't do outside of it? That doesn't make sense to me.
What's the point of the alliance if it doesn't have an enemy?
He
tried to take it off.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. He tried to take the enemy part off the table.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Why would anything?
Well, you can't be. Hey, the game doesn't work unless we got two teams.
Anything we could do to Russia outside the alliance, we could do to them within the alliance. Sanction them, economic sanctions, penalties, whatever. I mean, we could throw them out of the alliance. They could vote. The NATO alliance could vote to have Russia be taken out of the alliance again. So why was Russia's entry into the NATO alliance rejected? It seems like it was all done so that there could be a healthy number of boogeymen out there to justify the military-industrial complex to keep stealing your money.
On both sides.
Not
on their side too.
No, not really. I mean,
they got their own military-industrial complex.
Nah, I mean, it doesn't work on there. They look, everybody's more scared of I told you before. I told you when this whole thing popped off. People are way more scared of the Russian military than they should be. They can't even take the Ukraine.
That's what Medvedev said. He said that if there's an actual confrontation between Russia and NATO, the two sides are mismatched, and they're going to have to use nuclear weapons because, from a military perspective,
This is not even close.
It's not even close. That's
It's
exactly
not
what
even,
that's what they said. But I want to go back.
But Ukraine can't defeat Russia.
I just want to go back to this before it gets lost, because I tried to say this the last time, and I want to say it this time because I want everyone to share my pain about this. So here, get ready for some pain. Look at what the British have done to the Germans. There's Germans all over everywhere, and the Germans felt they had to fight a war to reunify their population. Now Putin is saying the same thing. Russians here, Russians there, Russians everywhere. We're going to have to bring our family back together. And everybody hates everybody else. Like, you get into these areas where they've created these political entities that are not natural, and you get these groups that just hate each other, and then somebody stokes the hatred. Because, like, for example, Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia existed as a country for 50 years. No problem. Then Tito died, and the next thing you know, you got 5 countries and everybody's going to war.
I don't know about this. I see this a different way. I'm not I'm not sold on this. I'm not even sold on Vladimir Putin saying, all these Russian-speaking people. First off, all you motherfuckers know how to speak English now. A lot of you. A lot of these people speak English. Chinese, too. Because America was the top dog.
The Chinese know how to speak English.
Yeah, Japanese, too. Speak perfect English. I seen them sing a Green Day song in perfect English. In live Green Day concert there in Tokyo. But I'm not so sold on all of this historical claim for which peoples are belong to which. Look, there's a difference between nationality and ethnicity. And this idea that the Germanic people were beholden to and belonged to Germany as a nation is a sort of conflation of history. I'm not making that connection. Because who were the Germanic people to begin with? I mean, if you want to do that, I mean, where are we going to? The nation state was an important development in human civilization. It puts boundaries on man's unfettered ambition. As soon as you start to rope in all the people who ever connected to you, who spoke a language, it's infinite. And it just gives you another justification to remove those borders.
But when you have,
and that's the mistake Germany made. Well, these people are Germanic too, and there's a lot of Germanic people spread throughout Europe. There's also a lot of people in Germany who didn't originate there in Germany either.
No, they didn't.
So
they weren't so nice to them.
Okay, so I mean, you could play that pendulum is always swinging in both directions.
But
it's called coming and going. People are always coming and going.
But both things exist. Your case and what I'm saying, when you create political boundaries that put groups that are not in harmony with each other into a political entity, and then you stoke hatred. See, that's the issue.
Yes,
it's like different. That's the point I'm trying to get to. Look at all these countries that were all victims of the colonial enterprise, which is really an extraction operation, just like robbing a bank.
Right. They did it for the money.
They made these people hate each other to get the money.
That's a strategy.
Okay, here's my point when I say I want to save my pain. I think they're doing the same thing. I think we, the people, are suffering the same psyop here today in 2024. Why do we hate each other like this? I'm not saying everybody has to agree with me, but you have to call me a traitor and a kite because we don't have the same ideas? Come on. What happened to, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly? And that freedom of speech means freedom of thought.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We're moving away from that. We have to think the same thing. What kind of scam is that? If we don't think the same thing, we're supposed to hate each other? I don't like that.
Yeah, but the problem is that mentality is used in both directions as well. That's the mentality that the globalists and anti-humans use to justify one world government.
Correct. Yes.
You're right.
They're taking it and running with it.
But the point is we have to have anchors. There have to be some anchors that hold the people to a certain place, a certain set of ideas, a certain culture, certain values. That's fine. America, and I think that America's founding ideas are the greatest development in the history of humanity in terms of the framework of government and how to structure a nation. That's my opinion. You think differently? Fine. Show me the documents. Whose country has it better? from an intellectual standpoint.
Well, the first question is, have you read the documents?
Well, and I'm not even talking about how they're used and interpreted today. I'm talking about how they really read, right? There's a difference between that. There's a difference, and people say, well, America, is this or that. Well, there's the America as it operates, but then there's the America on paper. I could draw a game plan down on paper, and then the people who go execute it are shit.
It's not a failure of the documents.
It's not a failure of the
failure
documents,
of the
like the
people.
Bible.
Right.
It's the same when they say, well, these Christians did this or they did that or they're responsible for this. It's not a failure of the documents. Oh, why is it that the Bible loses its credibility based on what people did with the set of ideas, but communism is always going to be improved with the next group of communists that do it? Prime example. Oh, well, those communists didn't do it right, but these communists or our communists will. But not Christians, though. Now, the next iteration of Christians who try and apply the documents right, no chance they'll get it right because of the Crusades or because of the slavery. Fuck you people. You're liars. Okay, you're out. I can take that whole group. You're the secularist traitors from the globalists. Okay, good. You're out. Now we're down to this nationalist movement. Okay. Who in this nationalist movement is going to prevail in having the right interpretation of the ideas and the right anchors to live by? Are we going to be Darwinists? Are we going to be Christians?
Well, that's okay. That's now we're getting down to the issue of why we have a secular, progressive educational system.
Right.
Because I always say, and the people that are following me at Prof Penn Podcast on X, or they come to the podcast, and I'm sure you're doing the same thing. And everybody needs to know this. We have no time to coordinate. It's the only time we get to talk. It's great. It's nice to see you. Yeah. Thanks for having some time for me today. Man. Thanks to have you. Thank you so much. Right back at you.
Hebrews and Negroes.
It's fantastic, isn't it? You gotta have both, okay? You just, to get things done, we're gonna have the hatchet man and the salesman. Mm-hmm. We're gonna go out there and we're gonna get the job done. Because you have no time for the bullshit, and I have time to speak to the bullshit. And the reason I say that is I'm raised with a sense of hope that people would like to become educated. I got that from my father. Now, Mrs. Professor Penn thinks I'm a dummy because I believe that. But I got it from my father. My father taught for over 50 years. He took so many people out of the St. Paul inner city, people from the community at the Rondo area, and helped them. It was at my house. I mean, I was there watching them teach people how to read. They were at the university. They had a thing called General College. I don't know if they still have it. But students that were not able to get into the school could go into General College. And my father spent time in General College working with people. He had this belief that people wanted to learn, and the reason why they didn't is they just hadn't found the right teacher. Mm. And I have that sense. It's a very expensive sense to have. you get fucked a lot trusting everybody. But when I look at the two different paths, one, trust no one, or trust everyone, I'd rather, love my neighbor as myself. Anyhow, my point is, we're going to go out, we're going to get organized, we're going to build this community, and we're going to build it around very simple ideas. And this is what I want to come back to. The progressive education removed an educational system that gave us spiritual borders. We don't have to be governed externally if we have internal spiritual borders, or at least it's internal spiritual aspirations for borders. Mm-hmm. We all struggle with the issue of sin. But if you don't see sin as sin, you're kind of starting at a deficit, right?
Right.
So our movement, and I'm going to speak for us, because it is a movement, and you correct me when I run afoul. Mm-hmm. I think we're about restoring spiritual and physical borders, because we don't have a country otherwise, and we can't govern the country if the individual citizens don't have an internalized set of values that we generally agree on. And that goes back to what you were saying. This is what got me off on this rant, was the Christian foundation of the country, which has been wiped aside by the Darwinists and the globalists, right?
On both sides of the political aisle.
They agree. Mm-hmm. That's why we now have a new ugly word, a new bad word. It's not libtard or liberal or leftist no, it's conservative, because they're the same people. if they're materialists.
Absolutely.
Because what's the difference between a Nazi and a communist? Not very much. What's the difference between a liberal and a conservative if they're both Darwinists?
An argument about where the border begins and where it ends. And we have to have borders. I mean, let's be clear. We that's the whole point of what we're saying is you have to have spiritual and physical borders. It's in a look, just what the Nazis did and saying, oh, these Germanic people, just what Putin's doing and saying these Russian people over here, these Russian people over there. And look, there are wars that have to be fought. Sometimes a territory just can't handle the duopoly of a new state that was created in an old culture that existed, and that has to go down sometimes. Cool, fine. If the Russians and the Slavs want to duke that out, if the Germanics and the Slavs want to duke that out, you guys fight that war. Tell us how it turns out. We'll be here watching. You go to popping some nukes off or something, well, that probably wouldn't happen anyway, but if it does, I guess all of us are implicated. And then there's a whole new discussion to have happen. That's not what's going on. They're artillery shelling each other. Brutal, ugly, ruthless, bloody. Okay. I mean, it's war. Nothing more than we've done or not done to people as well. For America, though, we adopted a similar sort of, idea, mentality about the reach and the scope of America's empire. We think the same thing. We just call it interest, see, because we don't have a cultural identity, a genetic, ethnic identity. Our corporate, global, political identity has become the substitute. So now everywhere where our interests are, our national interests are, we defend with the same type of fervor and expansionist, sort of method as the Germans did with the other Germanic tribes or whoever they were trying to reconsolidate, or the Russians or the Chinese. I think that,
Scam.
We're doing the same thing, just through a geopolitical, sort of framework. The American Empire, all of it. Now it's the Commonwealth. Now it's the Five Eyes.
No, but
Fuck the Five Eyes.
The point is,
with the fucking Canadians, you motherfuckers are going to be American pretty soon. I guarantee you that.
No,
okay,
but
you want to be in
saying,
an alliance? It's going to happen. New Zealand, fuck you.
American
fuck
citizens.
New Zealand, fuck Great Britain, fuck Australia. You motherfuckers are out there on the Australians. You got your own fucking culture there down under. Okay, you fucking deal with your own shit. You British, you deal with your own shit. You're too far from us for us to pretend like we're a commonwealth. We're not a commonwealth in language. Let's be honest here. This whole lie that language is this cultural
unifier
linchpin.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Yeah, so you can bullshit each other in the same vernacular.
This is great because I'm thinking to myself, as an American citizen, I get nothing but a bill for $1,300 from this $90 billion.
Yeah.
Because my interests are not satisfied by what goes on in the Ukraine. I don't get any benefit. I guess the scam is if you're German or if you're Chinese, and the Chinese are out there running some globalized scam, and you're in some village in central China, and you're saying to yourself, how in the fuck does this benefit me? So the ethnic identity and the globalist identity, really, both of them exploit the everyday person who's just trying to raise a family and live in harmony with nature.
Right.
So, the whole thing's a little bit scammy when we start losing our borders. Once we have no limit to that ambition. And
unfettered ambition.
That's what the
wanting
border.
To be God.
But that's a spiritual border.
Right.
And we need that. Second issue. I thought a lot about our last HEBROES.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was fighting you said, why don't we just write a check for $34 trillion and pay the debt off?
Right.
You're exactly correct. That's what should happen.
That's what should happen.
Just write it the fuck off.
Yeah. No, they don't want to. They like us straddled with debt.
That's correct.
That's the whole scam.
We need to
the debt is the scam.
We need to turn that.
And this is what I planned. I meant to say last time that I didn't get a chance to say, to further explain that is, the whole thing is backed by America's military prowess. Not only America's military prowess, but the belief. Currency is a game of belief. The belief in the financial system as it was constructed after World War II with the Bretton Woods Conference, and then the United States dollar as the reserve currency, then the petrodollar, and mountains of other financial economic instruments. Okay, we get it. It's about the belief. Well, nobody's really turning from that belief. People are dumping dollars, okay, but there's still way more dollars out there than there is fucking petro yuan. They can tell you what they want. And the reality is none of them really want to throw down because America's military has leapfrogged everybody else so much that it can undergird the entire European Finocchio NATO alliance single-handedly.
Well, there's a new gap I just saw on the news today before we came on. There's some new national security risk that the Russians have over us.
Of course. Hypersonic missile systems.
Whatever it is,
Right.
we'll find out.
Yeah.
But we have to take that public debt as a movement. We're not talking about, this is not theoretical. If you join this movement and support free people of America and amplify this message and build this population of American citizens, I'm going to tell you what I'm working for. I want to take that $34 trillion of public debt and turn it into your private asset. We're going to talk about a payoff for the American people.
Yeah.
Because
It's
someone's
like refinancing money into a mortgage.
well, somebody's getting paid off. Why can't it be me? Why can't it be just average, everyday American citizens?
But again,
why am I toting the note?
The reason why we won't do it, the reason why we haven't done it, is because
What you mean we?
we as a nation, we would have to reprioritize American manufacturing so we became an asset and equity based economy. We like being
Great. When did we start?
but you can't even do that if you say shit like Marco Rubio said on the Senate floor that America's the way of life here in America is dependent on all these other places in the world. Well, as soon as you start thinking that, we have to remain a debt society because we can't pay off the debt, because if you paid off the debt and you didn't start to manufacture and produce things that
You go
add
right
value,
back in the
you
hole.
go right back into debt.
That's correct.
Okay, so
So you can't self-govern unless you're self-sufficient.
there you go. And they
Right.
don't want a self-sufficient.
And
That's the sin of the globalist
And the
agenda.
self-sufficiency has to start right at home.
Yes,
Right now.
yes.
Grow a garden this year.
Yeah.
Just make a
Oh, they're
garden.
making that illegal. They're saying that's
Yeah, fuck them.
They're saying that's
Fuck
Did you
them.
see that?
Yes.
They said that
Yeah,
you know,
it's bad for the earth.
it's bad for the earth.
Yep.
Self-sustaining gardens. Remember, what about all the little self-sustaining gardens they put all over the communities when they were trying to preach that, you know, having a basketball court isn't good for the environment. We need to put a new green garden here for the community because aesthetically, you know, black people need to see flowers, and that's why
That's really
that's why
funny.
their cultural trauma is so.
Is that what they told you? That's hilarious.
I don't know why all those community gardens popped up
Oh,
all
that's
across
really
the
Black
country.
people need to see flowers. No, black people need to see.
Actually, probably some truth to it.
Yeah, they need to see some green.
They
too.
actually need to see, nature. You know,
Yes.
I'm not against that. But now you're telling us we can't grow our own tomatoes? Suck my dick. You people are stupid. And God bless, you know, I'm praying for all these other people out there who would believe this shit.
That goes back to my comment about analog. This is culture, right? So culture, what is culture? Culture is a set of beliefs and actions and rules that people share to survive together. We've got so damn deep into this digital thing.
Yeah.
This is analog. Get some dirt under your fingernails. Go out. That's great. But number two, we got a 3-point plan here. Number two, you okay there?
I'm good. Yeah.
We got to take this debt and transform it into asset. And your theory of the case is, if I understand what you're saying it needs to be about the restoration of American manufacturing. Okay, great. 1, 2. Number 3, end the endless war.
Oh, for sure.
That's the tough one because now we're really fighting the power, right?
Yep.
Got a very 3-point political ideology. Simple. What does it equal? Peace and prosperity.
Energy. Energy is the top one, and we're already fighting a bullshit war about this. Whole thing is about the energy. Well, it's fenced as being about energy. And Chris Martinson said it the other day on my Twitter space. We got to talking about nuclear energy and the efficacy of nuclear energy. That's already out there. We don't have to get to UFOs and extraterrestrial and all this other 0-point gravity type, you know, energy sources and shit. You know, for the astrophysics, for the Michio Kaku type people. We don't have to go there yet. Just nuclear.
What kind of what is that little Japanese
Yeah.
physicist?
Yeah.
What's his name?
String theory. He's a string
Michio
physicist.
Kaku?
Michio Kaku or something like that.
Great.
Yeah.
I can picture him.
I'm sorry. Apologies to the Japanese people out there if I'm butchering the name. I don't really give a fuck. I told you I don't trust the Japanese. I said that already. But, I don't trust the Canadians, so don't take it personal, okay? Definitely don't trust the French, don't trust the British. That's not out of hatred. Well, and I don't trust the Sudanese. I mean, it's not a color thing.
Did the Sudanese do something to us I'm not aware of?
No.
Because these other groups
No, they didn't do nothing particular. No, they didn't do nothing particular.
Because the Japanese,
I don't trust the Ivory Coast. They look, 200-300 years ago, they sold black people into slavery with no problem. No borders, spiritually. They had no spiritual borders.
Globalized slave trade.
There you go. Yeah.
Slavery, drugs, and piracy.
It's enough blame to go around. What I was trying to say is, what do we do now? You have to have some anchors, okay? A nation state is a great way to have anchors. But when you have a nation state, you somewhat have to abandon cultural and ethnic identity. The two kind of go hand in hand, because as soon as I say I'm Israel, but I'm beholden to every Jew all around the world, then Israel is a global. It's not a nation.
Isn't that a claim?
That is a claim.
Okay.
But same with America. It's just our interests, right? Democracy.
We've
adopted democracy as our ethnicity.
As long as we hold one race superior and another inferior, everywhere is war.
China doesn't do that. China doesn't really.
Oh, you know what? That's
the
I can't believe that's wonderful that you say that.
Okay.
Because that has been the philosophy.
If you're a Chinese person that lives in California, fuck off.
Oh, you're a traitor. But you're really a traitor.
Unless you're working for the security state in China, then we're
okay. But nobody knows that.
Nobody knows.
But the Chinese are really cool about this. They're really very mafia-esque.
Mm-hmm.
We're in it for the money. We really don't give a fuck about your politics. We don't give a fuck about your human rights, civil rights. Show me the green.
Right.
And they do that with every country. Every country.
Right.
Right?
Right. My point was, even if there are Chinese people that live somewhere else, their thing isn't, well, we're going to go, we're going to go take that place because but they're not really beholden to. Look, they try to genocide half their population just out of pure, what was, I'd say, natural resource politics, whatever they were thinking.
They just got rid of their
that whole one-child policy shit was loopy.
No, wait a second.
That was wild.
Their secondhand jerk-offs, you know what they did with them? Shot them.
They shot them.
They shot them.
Yeah.
That's called cleaning house.
So
they repopulated.
That's an extreme version of ethno-national culture where you're so invested in the survival or expedience of your race on the global stage that you kill your own people.
Maybe it's about
Bolshevism.
Maybe it's the communist way of getting rid of because the same thing happened in Russia.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Stalin, who was you see, I'm old enough to remember. The Russians were our allies.
Right.
We loved them.
They gave, 18 million soldiers to stop the Germans? Right?
I think it was more than that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Big. But they were our allies. President Roosevelt called him Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe, the mass murderer. Uncle Joe. It's interesting. I've been doing a lot of research, getting ready for podcasts upcoming. Because I'm into this Jewish Bolshevism thing, because this Europa movie got my wheel spinning. I have to ask you a question.
Okay.
Is Lenin Jewish?
Do
you think of Lenin as a Jew?
No.
Okay. Well, now it turns out he's a quarter Jewish. Does that make him a Jew because he was one grandparent was Jewish?
No.
Okay. The claim is
he can't be Jewish because he didn't believe in God.
Thank you. How about Stalin? Is he Jewish in your mind?
You can't be Jewish if you're a communist.
Okay.
Judaism and communism run antithetical to one another.
But not for certain segments of our current zeitgeist.
Of course. No, they'll say that communism and Judaism
is the same thing.
Well, no, they're
they're the same thing.
No, their claim is that first off, let's get this clear.
Could we clarify
Let's
this?
clarify this.
Thank you.
The claim is,
because this needs to come from a black man.
the claim is that Judaism was always that Judaism itself, even though professing to believe in God, the same Abrahamic God,
Was always satanic.
was satanic. Well, not only satanic, but even more casually, it was a rejection of Christ, which is satanic in ipso facto. But more that it was a pervert. Your Catholics, you're more what do you polite?
You want to know something?
You're more polite.
The whole podcast
You're more
up to
polite.
now was just intro. Please proceed.
Your more polite theological circles will simply say, like the A.J. Barkers of the world, will just say, theologically speaking, that Judaism is not in the right thought process. That they're not in the right spirit. Okay.
Did you tell me?
So my point is that the claim is that from Judaism sparked, an analog of communism that has always been working in conjunction with the religious leaders, spiritual leaders of the Judaism, that they're one and the same, not in that they profess the same things, not that their ideas aren't obviously antithetical, but that the antithesis is baked into the cake. It's done on purpose. And so that's what's claimed.
Wait, I got to get this right. So what I'm hearing you say is that, and I just want to say, I remember we had this conversation. You had some of your listeners said you take too long to get to the subject.
Yeah.
So everything was preamble because we've landed on the subject of today's podcast, right?
Yeah.
So that's really funny. But what I'm hearing you say is, if I want to make sure I got this correct, that's what's baked into the cake is that the Zionist Jewish dichotomy is manufactured, not organic or real, and that it's really one and the same. That the Zionists and the Bolsheviks are out there fronting for the religious Jews and vice versa the same.
Absolutely.
Well, how do you think about that?
I just don't think about it. It just doesn't float my boat. It's just not my line of country. It does not matter to me because I know what American identity is based on.
Really? What's American identity based on?
God.
Okay.
A creator. Christ. I mean, I don't need to split hairs about that. All I can say with clarity is you can't say you're Jewish, you don't believe in God. We're going to get you all over to one side of the line, not for some strange, roundup execution. But we got to get clear. But I don't like that you can use an identity as a race and ethnicity and a culture and a religion. I don't like that. You can't do it with American.
That's a little greedy, isn't it?
I mean,
That's greedy. That's greedy.
This identity coverall.
That's really funny.
It's like,
So religion,
I never like when
race,
they do the bingo coveralls at the bingo hall. That's really fucking bullshit.
Funny. That's really funny.
Get the traditional fucking bingo, okay?
Let's just get it down to.
Get it down to what it get down to, okay?
Your book called The Torah.
If you're a communist, fine. Be a communist. And you communists don't believe in God on a broad basis, and that's a
So why do they call it Jewish Bolshevism then? Because this is not clarified. Because if they became Bolsheviks, they gave up the Jewish part,
that's
right?
That's right. Well, that is what they should say, but they don't.
But then it has nothing to do with Jewish, does it?
But that's what they should say, but they don't, because they let their own, whatever you want to call it, hatred, lack of insight, whatever it is, they let that get in the way.
In other words, I could blame it on the Jews instead of going to caucus.
Well, yeah, back then.
Wouldn't that be great?
It's the same thing.
I could blame it on the Jews.
Blame it on the Jews. I can't stand it. It's so corny. It's just weak. From an intellectual standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, it's just weak. Even Jesus said it. It's just like, you guys are, you're faking the funk. He went to the temple.
That's great.
He went to the temple and said it. But that wasn't the sole, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John didn't end there. Blame it on the Jews.
You got to play that on one of the radio shows this week.
Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John had an extensive, prescription for what to do.
Now I know why the Beatles were so popular. Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, the four of them. That's why the Beatles made it.
Yeah.
John, Paul, George, and Ringo. There it is. You just diagnosed my whole generation.
Yeah.
They were standing in, and you know, John Lennon actually stood up and said the Beatles were more important than Christ.
Oh, wow.
He actually, no, he did. He said it. You can go find it.
Fuck off, John.
Well, he got fucked off, didn't he?
Well, yeah, he did. And anyway, the Beatles were, they made great music. What is great music without faith? But I'll say again, to be clear, to me, whether I believe with the theology of Jews or not, by Jewish theology's own standards, you can judge communism and secularism by their own standards. So these people don't get to say that they're Jewish if they fundamentally can't identify with the earliest precursors or the earliest descriptions or definitions of the identity.
Didn't you just
Can't do that.
recently tell me if you self-describe as something, we're going to take you at your word? Didn't you just say that to me recently?
Well, yeah. In the last episode, I was making a claim. I think
I got slapped around.
I was making a
bit with that.
statement that certain people say they're Jewish. So in casual conversation, if I referred to you as a Jew and you said you're a Jew, it's like if I refer to myself as a black man and then you say in a different conversation, well, he's black, I can't come back and go, no, I'm not. That's not technically right. You said you're a Jew. But Soros says he's a Jew, but he's not. And any of these, look, if you don't believe in God, you're not a Jew. Simple.
But the throughput of this thing is, what is Jewish Bolshevism? Is there Jewish Bolshevism?
A group of secular Jews who were Bolsheviks.
Who then organized to do what? To overthrow
Abraham.
governments. Governments.
No, their own Jewish heresy.
Oh, that's an interesting point. You say they're overthrowing their own culture.
Right.
That's a very good point. People lose that side of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because
when you talk about things in a vacuum, like the international Zionist conspircy.
But that shit goes down.
You think Jews don't have interclan throwdowns?
Oh, we do.
Oh, yeah,
right in my
obviously.
For real. I mean, for real.
I mean, they're going to kill Bibi. They're going to execute him.
No, you go home to your mother and father, and you say, oh, I've been going to synagogue these last 18 years, and now I've gone off to, let's say, Columbia University, and I come home and I say, that shit's all bullshit. I'm a Darwinist now. Of course, they don't say it like that. They just say they don't believe in God. Yeah. There's going to be a fight about that around the campfire, right?
Right.
That's a very important thing to re-inject into the conversation, that the first tradition that the Marxists were overthrowing was their own.
Right. Self-hatred.
That's lost in the
which is, and it reverberates through today to the people who adopted Marxism and communism, and that they often, one of the first signs of their political identity is a sort of self-hatred of their own culture and their own history. Here in America, white liberals, same thing. They have a profound self-hatred of whatever the categorical description of whiteness is. Even though it's not really real, they found enough reality in it to hate it.
That's a big transition between the boomer generation and your generation, because in our generation, we hated other people and loved ourselves.
Yeah.
So that got turned around real quick.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like any fight. If you get out over your center, it's pretty easy to get you off your feet. So that kind of hatred, racism and anti-Semitism, which was so pervasive in my age group, in my cohort, kind of is getting over your center. Easy to take that and reverse it and make people hate themselves, their children. Because there's always that potential parent-child tension, right?
Yeah.
Pretty easy to say, oh, hey, dad's a racist. Yeah, I agree. I hate him.
Professor Penn, ladies and gentlemen, we're running up on the 2-hour mark.
That quick?
And the reason why I stop at the 2-hour mark isn't to cut you off, but so we can stream on X and StreamYard, which the service we use to stream the podcast on X and Facebook, only allows up to a 2-hour stream, pre-recorded stream. So, Professor Penn, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you being here this evening. It's always a blast. Thank you guys for tuning in to another HEBROES episode. I just want to give a special fuck you to the United States Senate for this traitorous sellout bill you guys passed to send more money to another
22
forever
Republicans.
War. 22 Republicans, absolutely. The McConnell ban is still in full effect in the United States Senate, which is why I'm running. Kerry Lake, Trent Stagg, some others around the country are running as Real America Firsters to get into the Senate. Hopefully, if they get in the Senate, they don't get brought into a back room and told this is how things really work, and they stay America first. You know I will. They may kill me. That's fine. Kerry Lake said the same thing. More power. She's one of the real hitters. I mean, she actually had the offer come formally on recorded conversation and told them, 10 billion, 30 billion, doesn't matter. I'm not selling out. You'll have to kill me. Wow. I hold her in a special regard. Kerry Lake. I know a lot of people have a problem with her, but when push came to shove, she stood on it.
In the breach.
She stood on it. Yeah, she stood on it. But yeah, fuck you to the United States Senate. You guys are full of shit. And thank you to all the audience out there, the America Firsters. Thanks to the people that listen to the Royce White radio show on the John Fredericks Radio Network. Tune in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, for the Royce White Show on Real America's Voice, leading in the War Room and the great Steve Bannon. Shout out to the entire War Room posse, everybody over at the War Room. Grace
Is
Chong,
that 9 a.m. Central Time?
9 a.m. Eastern Time.
Eastern Time. There you go.
Shout out to the War Room crew, Grace Chong, Maureen Bannon, the great Steve Bannon. We'll see you all tomorrow on Real America's Voice. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here again, Professor Penn. Subscribe, like the Professor Penn podcast. Easy to find him on social media. Leave a comment tonight, like and subscribe to this channel. Look forward to the Royce White USA YouTube channel, hosting the replays of the radio show and the Real America's Voice Royce White weekend show. That's it for us. The fight continues.
Thank you.
The fight continues. As always, Godspeed.